We have a look at Hebrews 2 and Psalm 8. It tells us that Jesus is the promised Son of Man who was given the dominion in the beginning. We can see the connection between these two references and how they both draw upon the thoughts and ideas of Genesis chapter 1. By thinking upon what this is saying, we learn that God's purpose with man, spoken of in Genesis 1, is speaking prophetically of the Son of Man, even Jesus. This is the important point that is often overlooked. Jesus is this Son of Man, whom God made strong for his own purposes to be outworked in him, as Psalm 80 verse 17 speaks. Jesus often applied this term, Son of Man, to himself. We've got here some of the references, although there's around 80 altogether. Now let's look at Psalm 8 verses 4 to 6. The psalmist, this is David's psalm, says this: "What is man that thou art mindful of him? And the Son of Man that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, and hast crowned him with glory and honour. Thou madest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet." Now this is quoted directly in Hebrews chapter 2 verses 6 to 8. We won't reread it again of that section. It quotes this exactly. Now note the point that all things have been put under his feet. Yet we come to Hebrews chapter 2. We'll pick up halfway through verse 8, and on verse 9 he says this: "For in that he put all in subjection under him," that is the man, "he left nothing that is not put under him." So he has total dominion. That's what he's saying, the man has. But he says, "But now we see not yet all things put under him." So although this was a promise and a purpose from the beginning, and the psalmist is speaking about it, it's not yet accomplished. This is what he's saying. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honour, that he, by the grace of God, should taste death for every man. Now what this is telling us is that Jesus is the man that is spoken of in the psalm, and he is the man that's spoken of in the beginning, to whom was given the dominion over all of God's creation. Yet he has not fully taken this dominion, but now waits at his Father's side till that promised day. Now we know that's the case because Hebrews 10 verses 12 to 13 tells us plainly that he's waiting for that time when his enemies are made his footstool, that is, they're under his feet, and he takes the rulership. Now when you understand that, you consider the vision that's found in Daniel chapter 7 verse 13. In that vision here we have a startling set of things that are portrayed to us. He says that I saw in the night visions, after he'd seen all these horrible beasts coming up and vying for dominion over the earth, and all the wickedness that they would perpetuate on the earth. He says, "And behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him." Notice that. He's one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. These words are quite startling, and it's an startling Old Testament revelation. For here we have the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven, which is something that is usually associated with angels, and more particularly with God himself coming with. God is often spoken this way, usually through angels coming with clouds. But here we have the Son of Man coming in clouds. It's a startling revelation, and it's just telling us that this one would be in heaven. He'd be in God's right hand, and he'd come again in judgment. Now, this speaks of the Son of Man exalted and coming with God's power. Now, Jesus refers to that himself in Mark chapter 14 verse 62 in his comments to the Jewish leaders of his time, at the time of his trial, that they would see this event because they would be the subject of his judgment, and also Revelation chapter 1 verse 7. So let's come on to our last section here, confessing that Jesus is the Son of God.